Welcome back to another episode of Ideas to Human Better. I am Eva Payne, and it is October 17th at 9 p.m. This is a Sunday night. I came upstairs because I had this idea to start writing on something, and as I opened my computer, this podcast that I have been waiting for whatever reason just started playing, and I spent maybe 20 minutes trying to figure out how to turn it off because I didn't know where it was coming from. I thought, I haven't downloaded this yet. It was something I had recorded in StreamYard and it was just sitting somewhere on my computer. So anyway, I finally just turned everything off and thought, okay, universe, I will put Ashley Michaud out into the world on this podcast if that is what you are asking of me. So you guys, this is a really important and powerful conversation around psychedelics, psilocybin in particular, which has been typically known as magic mushrooms. So there, in my life anyway, growing up in the 90s, so much stigma around drugs and say no to drugs, say no, it's going to harm you, hurt you, everything's bad, nothing's good. And Ashley, if that is your belief currently, if you are holding on to that, I want you to take a really big deep breath. And I want you just to have an open heart and an open mind as you listen to Ashley's story. If you can do this, maybe just the tiniest bit, you might be able to see a different perspective and something that can truly, honestly heal so many people in their day-to-day journey. So with that said, please welcome Ashley Michaud. Ashley Michaud, thank you so much for being here with me today on Ideas to Human Better. It is an honor to be speaking with you. This is a world psychedelics integration that I am falling in love with very quickly. And so I'm trying to learn as much as I can from people who are knowledgeable. And I found you. So I'm so grateful that you are willing to come on this show and share your wisdom and knowledge with me and the viewers/listeners. So thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my pleasure. So happy to be here, share in these conversations. Really, it's a blessing.
I love it. So let's start with like who you are and how you got into this space and what you do in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's pretty crazy, actually. I've been working with psychedelics for 17 years or so now. But even before that, I was very much into herbology. I didn't have a lot of foundation growing up, a lot of adult supervision. So, where I went for any kind of foundational tools and lessons and, parenting was all to Mama Nature. I was the girl that in high school would find the natural alternatives to makeup and bring them in for my friends, the one who would be signed up to baseball team. And then I'd always, even though I could play baseball, I'd always ask to go in the outfield so I could sit and play with the clovers and butterflies, like such a weirdo. And then, when I got older and I actually moved out on my own at 14 years old, so really, really young. And it's because, I was watching both of my parents, they had issues with drinking, and then later on that turned into pharmaceutical dependency and substance abuse and things like that. And so I saw what those kind of industries did. That being said, I fell into it myself too. I went to hospitality and tourism school, and then I spent over a decade in the industry, the hospitality and tourism industry, doing the same kind of thing, drinking, falling into that lifestyle, eating the sad food, the standard American diet food. And then all of a sudden one day, and I swear this is thankful to all of my use of psychedelic medicines in the past, mainly psilocybin, which is magic mushrooms for anybody new to this realm. And I had this crazy awakening. I was just walking along the beach in the ocean. Like, thankfully, with hospitality and tourism, I got a lot of travel experience. And so I was on this beautiful place on the ocean, and I hear this voice. It's time, Ashley. It's time to go back to the roots of where like all your trauma happened. You got to face this. And I sold everything on the fly. Like I And I bought an airplane ticket and I went back to Ontario and I got sober. And, like, I got off the alcohol, I got off cigarettes, I got off the standard American food, and I just went all in. And in this time, I went back to my roots, like back to herbology. I went back to anything that I knew about growing food. I went back to psychedelics, which I knew was a tool that a lot of people weren't talking about, but one that I knew worked for me from past experience. And so I was working with the heroic dose. I was, going into the the Terence McKenna archives, and from there, once I got myself better, I knew that well, I knew that I had to reward myself in some way. So I followed in Terence and Dennis McKenna's footsteps, and I went to South America. I rewarded myself in that way, and I traveled Colombia, Ecuador, Peru. It was incredible. I thought I was going there for psychedelic medicines, but the truth is, it was more about just connecting with nature. I knew that I was supposed to be there. I bawled my eyes out when I saw the mountains in Colombia. I had amazing experiences, just incredible, that some had to do with learning about psychedelics, but a lot of them just had to do with learning about life and learning how to trust myself. And it was really an amazing time. And when I got back, I knew that I truly had healed myself, because I had conceived my own son. Doctors told me at 21 years old I could never get pregnant. I had hormone issues, I had irregular periods, all of these things. And I think between quitting all the bad stuff and then rewarding myself with something that really gave back to me, like travel, something that was really dear in my heart, and then adding, of course, incorporating in some of the good stuff, like proper nutrition, a good water supply, and these other tools that grow naturally around the world. I was able to conceive my son, and he's 5 years old now. And in these 5 years, well, I guess 5 years and 9 months, he's been in my life, happy and healthy. I really, in that time, built up my business, which is Elemental Growth. It started just as a blog and like an apothecary that I had in my house, and then now as a coaching business. I got certified in nutrition, hormone health, as a Reiki master, and I just really integrate all of those things in. I knew that there was a piece about food, a piece about spirituality. Psychedelics was something I just couldn't let go of. I feel the need that I had to talk about this, that I had to normalize it in some way, because there's so much stigma attached that is so so old and outdated. And so I just found a way to integrate it all in. And I found some really great mentors along the way: Dr. Dan Engel, Dennis McKenna in the McKenna Academy. I've worked with Xander Fryer and other people in business too. And again, now where my business is at is, and that we do have a community. I feel that that's a really important component. But for when I was first starting in the coaching realm too, it was all one-on-ones, and that was a great experience too. So even now, I still offer both. And the group stuff is normally free, like everybody's invited to that. But the one-on-ones, that's for the people who really want to dive in. And yeah, so we do have a few offerings. We've got some guidebooks, we've got some recipe books, we've got contributions that we do to Psychedelic, which is a great online community.
Are you going to go to the conference in November? Isn't there?
I'm not sure. I'm in Canada, so travel here is like we can't even leave Ontario. They've got us. They've got us. For a girl who really does love to travel, it's been a little sticky there. And yeah, I'm really hoping that things are going to change for the better still. So I'm just waiting it out in that way. But I also don't feel like that my need of travel is worth going against some of my other values. So I'm just waiting it out for now.
Yeah, sure. That makes perfect sense.
But I do love contributing to them, every month for over 2 years. And, they're, just an amazing community. Great resource for anybody.
I love it. Okay. So I want to talk about, why psychedelics. I'm going to pretend like someone's watching this that really knows very, very little. So let's just talk about psychedelics first a little bit. Why psilocybin or any psychedelics in that field? Like, what is it about these fungi, these plant medicines that are so different from other options out there as far as becoming like a healing modality or a healing tool?
Yeah, so one of the first things that I like to say is that they're non-addictive. A lot of pharmaceuticals, the goal is to make you dependent. You come off of them, then all of the suppressed emotion or suppressed pain comes back. All the suppressed weight, even with supplements and stuff like that, we see this. Still living the same lifestyle, but using these supplements, you lose a bunch of weight or go on a diet, and then that weight comes back. It's the same with pain. It's the same, with emotional pain, and these kinds of things, these dependencies sometimes lead to addiction. Sometimes this is addiction with pharmaceuticals, like what happened with my parents. Sometimes it's alcohol. Again, what's gone through my family bloodline, something that I personally had to deal with too. Just get it out of me. And psychedelics were great for that for two reasons. One, they're non-addictive in themselves. They'll usually, once you start working with them, it's almost like there's a message coming through, or a knowing of, okay, it's time to take a break, or it's time to work with this medicine again. It's time for a new message. And another thing is, I've been working with these things for, 17 plus years. That doesn't mean it's an everyday occurrence. Most of the time it's 6 months in between, except for this last year. And I've even gone years in between too. I'll say that, even though it's because it takes a long time to do the integration work. Sometimes it takes years to do that integration work. This last year I've been doing a lot of articles on microdosing. So I have been
I
working
just
with
literally wrote down microdose to ask you about that. That's so
yeah,
funny. We'll get to
yeah.
that.
Yeah. So previously, I would always do, a hippie dose, or what they call a museum dose, or the heroic dose. I would go all in. But this last year, writing articles on microdosing, I wanted to learn that world for myself as well, which means dosing more often, but it's also a lot smaller. But here's one of those things too about it being non-addictive, is that you still get the effects. I noticed, even though I've been working with these things for 17 years now, it's the microdose. Even if I take an average microdose, would be 50 milligrams to 250 milligrams. And if I take sometimes even 100 milligrams, it's like I might have to call, not call in. I'm my own boss, but I sometimes have to step back from work or from my duties, and and for other people it may be a little bit different. But I know that if that was alcohol or cigarettes, it's like I would want more and more and more. It wouldn't be after 17 years that I want less, less, less. It's that I'd
Mm.
want more and more and more. But sometimes I'll take 100 milligrams as a microdose and just be like, yeah, I could have done with less. Or 250 milligrams. One day I did take the full microdose of 250 milligrams, and I was like, I'm done. I make homemade chocolates, and I also make blue honey and things like that too, and definitely overdose those microdoses as well. Just in trial and error, but it's all in good fun. Like, there's nothing really to be scared of. These things have never really harmed anybody before. They've
Yeah.
definitely never been fatal before, unlike many other things out there, like, cigarettes, alcohol, pharmaceutical drugs.
Right. So what is the benefit for you? Like, it sounds like this is something that you really have a great relationship with. And so why do you do it? What is the, like, for someone who doesn't get it, or someone who still has that stigma attached to it, like all drugs are bad and this is a drug and so it's bad because the government says so. What benefit does it have for you? How do you see it transforming your life and other people's lives?
Yeah, so I get messages in daily of how psilocybin specifically, but sometimes I also get messages on Cambo and DMT and ayahuasca and other medicines that, some I've worked with before, some I haven't, but I'll get messages, across the board on a daily basis. Most of them, because my realm is psilocybin, most of them come through around that medicine. That's usually what I'm posting in my feed about. And it's everything from depression to PMS to addiction to opiates and other things. And just about every story I get is, yeah, these things saved my life. It's just
Mhm.
insane. So, and I know in my own personal life, it was the personal development piece. It was the understanding of oneness, the understanding of, that there's fractals in life, as within, so without, as above, so below, that we have the same amount of a fat in our brain as a walnut has. This, the doctrine of signatures type of fractals. There's also the stuff about, we have the same amount of water in our body as a planet. We have the same microbes in our gut as in the soils. And, when you start seeing things disrupt our connection to nature, it's easier to take back responsibility. It's easier to liberate yourself from, all the stuff that we've been suppressed from, our connection to nature as a whole. I also noticed too that it helps me. I had a lot of trauma growing up. So there's a lot of stuff, CPTSD, which is complex trauma, means it's several traumas, usually within the first 7 years of life. Most addiction comes from a suffering within those first 7 years of life, but sometimes it's beyond, right? That would be, a trauma from war or something like that. That would be PTSD. Complex PTSD is several things happening, and so I had a lot of stuff that I had to work through. And psilocybin gave me the tools. It led the way. It was like there was a guide with me. And sometimes I believe it's just a belief that, or a knowing or a remembering that you are divinely guided and protected, that you are safe to kind of leave the matrix. You are safe to do the things that bring you joy. You are safe to set healthy boundaries. You are it's almost like an obligation, a moral obligation to do this work. Maybe that's why the world itself is so overpopulated right now, because there's not enough people doing the work. So we need more people, and, I love seeing that in this realm, myself included, that it is helping so many people just live their highest potential, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, that's really powerful. Can you tell me, I have so many questions for you that are coming up, but let's just start with, let's go back to when you really started to be intentional about using psychedelics for yourself, psilocybin for yourself. Did you have a facilitator, guide, trip sitter person with you? Were you just like on your own? Did you have a friend there? What what did it look like? Let's just talk about what it looked like and how that practice for you was maybe different than other times you had used it in your past or had friends use it or whatever.
Yeah, so most of my life I would be on my own. That's when I was really young. Sometimes I was just with friends. Uh, but when I really became intentional about it, I would be on my own, or I had a partner at the time. Well, a best friend became
Yeah.
became a partner, or ex-partner even. There's a lot of transition there, but we were just really great friends, and the man, he didn't drink or anything like that, so it was a good influence on me at the time.
Yeah.
And so I would feel safe going on the big journeys, just knowing that somebody else was around, but I still had my privacy. I still had my space to explore, which I feel was what I needed to do.
Yeah.
This being said, I also did start trip sitting with him, or what we started doing was field trips. And we would just take some people from the city that were interested in these things, already using these things, already had access to them, because I never got into the distribution. I believe that, Mama Nature is a great supplier. You don't need me for that. That's not my job here. My job is definitely the integration work. And so there's tons of other people. There's, Mama Nature herself that does that. But we did do the trip sitting. So people would come to, our place in the country, and we would guide them, through the forest, down by the water. We would, give the ambiance and everything. So, that was something. When I really felt that there was a need to have a practitioner for myself, that was when I was working with Kambo, frog medicine. It's
Mhm.
not a psychedelic per se, but it's definitely a pretty intense experience. And, there's definitely a guide associated with the Kambo spirit as well, that does stay with you for a long time.
Wow, that sounds really cool. Can you tell me for someone who has zero experience, like maybe ever doing anything, What does that process look like? So you ingest the psilocybin, and what starts to happen? How long does it take? What does it feel like? Like, let's just do like 101 for someone who has absolutely no idea.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. This is a great thing, and I'm going to start at the very beginning. I actually, I talk about this all the time with my clients. Is the rebirthing protocol, and I wrote about it too on Socialdelics. So you guys can find the whole guide there if you want the written version, socialdelic.com. Here's it always starts. So if you think about it as the birthing process itself, what happens? There's the conception, there's the preparation, that pregnancy time. There is then, the actual birth phase. And, that's what everybody's always talking about. That's what you hear everything. But that's the same as the psychedelic experience, those 6 hours, right? That you're actually, having the experience itself. But then there's those 3 years or 1 to 3 years of breastfeeding. That's part of the integration. What's also part of the integration is the other 18 years that they're living in your house, and when they start having their own kids and you become an elder yourself and start sharing these messages, that's all part of the integration process. And so I do lay that out in my article on Socialdelic. I think you can even find it on my YouTube as well. This is a
I'll
lesson
make
I
sure to
do
link
really
it.
love to
I'll link
share.
it down below. I'll find it and link it so people can get to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it'll give a lot more detail than what I'm giving on our podcast today.
Sure.
So here's the thing: when you get to that experience, I guess as I said, I'll start from the beginning. So we have the conception. That is when you make the decision. I'm called to work with this medicine. I always believe it's a calling. It's not some fad. The right medicine. Psychedelics are not for everybody, but there is something in nature for everybody. Not every psychedelic is going to be for everybody, but there is likely going to be one or two of them that really do call to you at some point in your life. And some people will hear the calling, some people will ignore it and put a hold to it, and some people will rush into it and want to do everything. And I do really believe and stand for that it's a calling, because I've had too many synchronicities in my life for it to be otherwise.
Mm.
And yeah, I've always had good experiences, even though the bad trips do come up. I'm able to deal with them, and it's because I'm ready. Right when the student is ready, the teacher appears. That's what the calling is. And so I truly believe that, and I want to stress that 100%. Yeah, make the decision, but make it because there is a calling in there. There's a sign. There's something where that this is the right path for you. And then comes the preparation. This is when you find a trip sitter, find a coach, when you order your supply, when you do the research.
Mhm.
Really look into it. Anybody who's pregnant, they're doing research about the
Oh
birth.
yeah.
you know and then so you do all that in the pregnancy, in the preparation phase, and then we have the actual experience. And so I'll use psilocybin for an example first, then we can go into a couple other medicines if you're
Sure.
interested, if we've got
Sure.
time. So psilocybin is oftentimes around 6 hours. So within the first 20, it hits me very fast, usually within 20 minutes. But some people it doesn't hit until 45 minutes to an hour mark. So anytime within that hour, you can start to feel, maybe a little tired. You want to yawn or you want to lay down, maybe cover yourself and be comfortable. Anything like
Can
that.
I ask, can I interrupt really quick and ask, do you have just eat the dried mushrooms raw? Do you blend it and put it in a
Oh,
drink? Are they capsules? So how are they ingesting? And then how much do you take? I mean, if someone's like, yep, let's go, I've done all this research, are you just right in there with a hero's dose? Or do you kind of start people off
yeah.
slow?
Well, different strokes for different folks, I think.
Okay.
For me, I went all in on heroic dose. I
Yeah.
knew that I knew I had to go big. And I'm just a small woman too. There's there's not much big about me except for my heart. Okay, and my hair sometimes.
Hey, I got big hair too. It's a little flatter today, but I get it.
But yeah, Yeah, so I went all in heroic dose, and that's what I did for a long time until, and there's a lot of books out there on microdosing, like James Fadiman. There's a lot of more research coming out around that than heroic dose. But it wasn't until my mentor, Dr. Dan Engel, actually started talking about it that I was like, okay, maybe it's worth it. I took a breath and, and I moved in and I started experimenting with that. But before, it was just, for me, the heroic dose. This being said, a lot of people are starting off on microdoses, and I believe that that's okay too. If it depends on what you need.
Right.
This is a bio-individual thing, just like diet. There's no right diet for anybody. We all have a different set of chemicals that we need to be our best selves, and so we all have a different formula. You've got to find that formula, and that's why working with a coach is a great thing to do, because they can ask more questions, dig deeper, use their experience, as well as whatever trainings that they've had, and really integrate that in so that it's a unique roadmap for you. And that's one of the things that we do at Elemental Growth. But it's not everything that we do, and it's definitely not not essential for everybody either to have that, because you can find that on your own, just as I did. I just tapped in my intuition, and I listened and I gave it a shot. I did the Miss Frizzle thing. I got messy and I made some mistakes and I learned from them. And sometimes that's the best way to do it too. So it depends. A microdose, as I said, would be anywhere between 50 milligrams and 200 milligrams. A nano dose would be anything under the 50 milligrams. When you start going over the 250 milligrams, you start getting into what would be considered like a museum dose or a hippie dose. Then you get into the mega doses, anything between, I'd say even like 2 to 4 milligrams would be about or 2 to 4 grams, I would say.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, would be about a mega dose. And then the heroic dose is 5 grams of dried psilocybin mushrooms. Anything above that, we often just call the hero's journey. So there's the heroic dose or the hero's journey.
Got it.
Definitely anything over 5, you're not coming back to the same person. But even the heroic dose, you step into your power. Terence McKenna, he said something about, if you're not the hero of your own story, then you've got some heavy editing to do. And he was the big advocate for the heroic dose. So I found that they both go together very, very well. Learning how to be the hero of your own story, learning how to do that editing, seeing what editing needs to be done, and being shown the way over time. So it's a beautiful thing.
So they're like an hour in. So you're sitting there. Let's just say, okay, by an hour, you're starting to feel different.
Yes.
What does that look like? What do you recommend for people? Like, okay, if you're going to go on this would be, are they sitting out in nature under the stars? Are they laying in bed with an eye shade and headphones and music? Are they, whatever you just intuitively want? What have you found that like really works, or that you really like, as far as maximizing that experience and really connecting, and being present in that moment and learning from the psilocybin?
So for us at Elemental Growth, it's always about nature, right? My book was Be the Change. It's all about, using Mama Nature's cyclical cycles to help you change. It's like Farmer's Almanac for the soul. It goes into the moon cycles, the seasons, all this stuff. So when you come to Elemental Growth, that's what you can expect, is that it's going to be alignment to nature. And when we used to do the field trips, it was all out in nature. Some of my greatest trips when I started understanding the universe and stuff was outside. This being said, not everybody has the opportunity. For the first time in my life, I live in the city. Okay, I never would have done this except for, I feel that I needed it. I needed to see what the other side was like. That way I could still be humble, in a way. There was a lot of lessons in me coming here and seeing, how much harder it is than when you live in the country to be connected. And, it's a different kind of connected. It's, and so I do understand that, not everybody has those opportunities. Not everybody can afford to go on vacation, afford by time or money, So, if you want to start using these things, microdoses are great to just use in your everyday life. The average protocol is 5 days on, 2 days off. That's great for somebody with a 9-to-5 job. And it can be really liberating in that. I hear stories all the time of this. when it comes to the heroic dose, a lot of clinical trials and centers that are going up, they're all about the Terence McKenna the
Yeah.
higher doses, and it's that you're laying down in silence and darkness and all this stuff. I love Terence McKenna. I love his brother Dennis McKenna. I love the McKenna Academy, but being in silence and all that, I've done it. That wasn't the way for me. For me, it was just connecting, because that's what mushrooms are. They're the connectors. Not only that, not only are they connecting everything. The literal World Wide Web, underneath ground. That's what mycelium is. It connects everything in the forest. So mushrooms are great connectors, but they're also great at opening up our throat chakra. So being around people can be helpful, or just doing any kind of work in that way where it is that you want to connect to your truth. So one tool that I often recommend for anybody who's inside doing this stuff is find a yoga practice. For me, it was Kundalini yoga. I've been practicing that since 2014 because it goes through all the chakras. It's very intense. A Kundalini awakening is so similar to a psychedelic experience. So when you mix the two, I feel you really get the most powerful benefits. And so, yeah, if you're in the city, that would be a beautiful practice. As soon as you start feeling tired in that first hour, get out on your yoga mat and have everything prepared ahead of time. The mat, maybe a journal, maybe a candle or something. But once you start feeling that tired, it's good to kind of push yourself out of it, because it's around that first hour mark when you start feeling tired that a bad trip can come on. And this is the hell that happens. This is where you're faced with the hell you're in. And sometimes it's not the hell you're in. Sometimes it's a lesson in empathy for the hell that the world itself is in. I've had experiences, after, meeting with people who are epileptic and things where, I'd have a bad trip and actually experience not only myself as if I was epileptic or as if I was having a seizure, but I feel the collective. I've done this on fast too, where you're feeling the hunger of the world. And so there's different lessons, but it can, very well be a bad trip. Maybe it's something coming up from your past. Maybe it's something in the collective energy field that you're just empathetic to. And so
what does that look like? Can you explain what a bad trip? I mean, are you just for people who don't understand what it actually feels like or what you're going through? So you're sitting in nature, you're outside, you're noticing things are becoming more crisp, more clear, more brighter. You're seeing the trees breathing, whatever might be happening with that connection, getting closer and closer. What happens that then kind of turns your awareness to something else that makes it a bad trip? What are you experiencing in your mind, in your body, around you that makes it that? Or what does it look like to you when you've had that?
Yeah, so oftentimes if I've gone into a bad trip, it doesn't happen every time, but it does happen to me more often than I believe most people. And I know that that's one of the reasons why, it's my job to help people through this kind of thing. And so
and you keep going back, even though you're having these quote unquote bad trips. You're still working in this place and you're still doing it. So it can't be that bad.
No, it's very beneficial. And once you start seeing it and going through it and you're like, good, I'm glad I experienced that. You realize in the healing that it's the healing that brings strength. And if you're not facing something, then you're not healing. You're still suffering. That's why I always go back, is because I know that I'm healing. I know in every bad trip that the suffering leads to transformation. Right. From every hell leads to heaven. And any of the bad trips I've been on, most of them haven't been in nature. I'd say, a few times in nature. It was this one time particularly, I was on a field trip, doing a field trip, and I walked past these trees trees I run past every single day, because I'd get up at 5 a.m. I'd run with the husky and barefooting it the whole time. I've seen these trees a million times, but I was walking back and the dose was really kicking in at that time, and the trees were calling me into the forest. And I'm like, if I go into the forest, then the other side, I might not come out. It was almost like I knew that it was a dark energy, that if I went in, it, maybe I would end up schizophrenic or something like that. There was something just dark, and I knew that it was the wrong path for me. I knew to stay on my path. And so that's what it was, right? I could have, it's almost like an emotion. An emotion will move through your body in 90 seconds. But if you hold on to it, if you dwell on it, if you start overthinking about it, if you react, instead of taking a breath, that can last all day. That can last all year
Sure.
for some people,
Sure.
So it's almost like that. It's like I made a choice, and that choice to stay on my path and not to go to the darkness. I would never believe that trees are dark or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But it was a message for me that to stay on my path. It was me being confident and committed to my path and to my job and to what it was, to not go off,
mm-hmm.
Because maybe there's something else there. And so that was an example of one in nature. Some that I went through, this is where most of my bad trips have happened, is in the house. And it's usually often a point where I start getting tired, and I start, within that first hour, and then I go lay down and I get comfortable. And it's in that getting comfortable that I start to see the hell, but if you are able to pull yourself out of it, like I'll give you an example. I did a boot camp, 50 women, I was helping them as an entrepreneur just build their business. They're all female founders. It was a really fun, 3-day boot camp that we did. And after I was done, I wanted to integrate that experience. And also I had somebody else that wanted to have one of I think it was the person's first hero dose experience. Okay. And so I booked that for that night. I'm like, this will be a great way for me to, help this person, and at the same time to, and that's not something I do all the time either. I'm not much of a guide, but for some people that I do make the exception. And this time I did. And I'm like, okay, once it started hitting in, I'm like, okay, I got to go to the bed. I have to lay down. And I didn't even say anything. I just got up and left. And when I laid down, I started, feeling like I was having a seizure. I started feeling my whole nervous system just go crazy. I started seeing, every single person that was suffering in the world. I was feeling their pain, even telling the story. It's like I feel it in my solar plexus, just that, just this pain. And I was having a really, really hard time with it. And then I remembered, okay, laughter's, the killer of any intensity. And so and that's always my go-to default. If I can't get out the emotion or the feeling through yoga, I go to laughter every time. That will help you out. Those are my greatest tips for you guys if you end up in this situation. And so I started thinking to myself, I'm like, the mushrooms are consuming me. The mushrooms are consuming me. I feel them through my whole body, and the mushrooms are consuming me. And then I just started laughing, and I'm like, I consume the mushrooms, and now they're consuming me. And once it hit me that I'm under the influence, I got up and I just started laughing. I was kind of rolling around, and my friend that was in the other room was like, I think I just fell in love with you in this moment, because I've never heard anybody laugh like that. It was just so beautiful. So I went from the hell to the heaven, but in that, through the laughter, I was able to heal, and that healing is what brings strength. And that's why it is that I go back to these things. I've had many bad trips. I do have some other ones that are on YouTube. One, because I oftentimes, if I'm working with these medicines, and other things I've written about is aligning them with the moon cycles and different ways you can use the moon cycles. You can find those articles on Psychedelics, but also I've done YouTube videos, after a new moon ceremony. And I've done another one. It's just a mini documentary, like I think 14 minutes long. And it talks about one of my really bad trips where I was able to heal and face some of my trauma from childhood, and just, what that really looked like for me, the good, the bad, the ugly, and, the real beauty that really comes after it.
I think that's really beautiful that you're able to look at these experiences that come in and really process them. Like it's not something that was so scary that you're not willing to go back or still work with them, but that you're using them and you're like, what are you here to show me today? Or what do I need to learn today? It's like this relationship that you
Yeah,
have.
symbiotic relationship, 100%. It is. I
Wow. I
believe we
love that.
all have that on some level with something in nature. There's something. Maybe for somebody it's a pine tree. For somebody else it's the mushrooms or a specific mushroom. For others it's the adaptogenic or the uh, Ayurvedic herbs, or for
Sure.
everybody it's going to be a little bit different. But I do believe it's really good to find that thing. Mushrooms are just my thing, like Terence McKenna said. Mushrooms are my thing. They've taken care of me. They heal me. They love me. Like,
I love
they
it. I love
straighten
that
me
you
out.
have that relationship. So let me
Yeah.
ask you then, how far apart would you recommend for someone? So let's say someone's like, they've done all the research, they found their person to help them, like take them through. They have that first experience, good or bad, and I want to get into integration. But do you recommend like one and done? Do you say once every 3 months? Like, what is the data or science saying as far as the benefits, or how often, or is this a once a year thing for everyone? Is it different? What have you found in your practice and in your research?
Yeah, so there are tons of different protocols about this thing. I would say that the more intense your experience, the more time you take to integrate. If
Mm-hmm.
you have if you're working with ayahuasca, you don't need to go back. You know, if you're same with ibogaine, but maybe you do. Maybe it's a year down the road. Maybe it's a decade down the road. Ayahuasca and Cambo. When you work with those kinds of medicines, it's usually uh, a certain amount of ceremonies, like 3 days or something like that. So you're doing it all together, and then that's a big experience to take back. So it takes a long time to integrate. Um, I had a really hard time when I first came back from Cambo, and I know my mentor, Dr. Dan Engel, when he came back from ayahuasca, he spent a year just in the desert integrating, unplugged from everybody and everything until he found his purpose again, and was able to build his life in alignment to that. And I've very much done this several times in my own life too. New beginnings. I'm still a nomadic spirit. I haven't settled down the same way that he has, but I've definitely lived one very very unique life, we'll say, and with many new beginnings, which has always been very beautiful. And so yeah, each one is going to be different, but the more intense the experience, like if you're working with those medicines, even ibogaine, it's like you don't have to go back for a long time. If you're doing a heroic dose of psilocybin mushrooms and it is crazy intense, if you take a hit off of a DMT pen and it's a very intense experience, take 6 months, take a year. You don't have to go back, and they tell you don't go back. It would be you forcing it if you are going back, and you'll know that. Your intuition will tell you,
Mm-hmm.
your body will tell you. There is ancient information in everything in nature. There's information in the food you eat. Not if you're on the standard American diet, there's not. If you take up, parts of the whole, then it becomes fragmented. You don't get all of the
Mm-hmm.
information. You're getting fragmented information. You yourself become fragmented. You always feel like there's a piece missing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're eating whole foods, if you're working with entheogenic medicines in their whole form, you're going to have the information to understand in your own intuition when that time is. You're going to be tapped into the synchronicities that allow you to see the signs, to get the messages, to be in tune with universal flow, be in tune with yourself and your body. So you are really the one who knows. There's nothing that I could say or that even science could say to make that different. And but that is usually my rule of thumb. If it's an intense trip, take longer.
Yeah, that's
Because
beautiful advice. Thank you for that. So let's talk about this. So when you're in the experience, I know for my friends who have done it, the people that I've guided through, everyone is so different. I have not had one person yet, not that I've had a ton, but who've said like I felt this, then I had this experience. Like for everyone, it was so different. It really depended on sort of where they were in their own journey. I have a friend who did it with her son who was 18. And for him, it was like this total vision quest of Like he had no fear of where he was going to be in 30 years. You know, he just knew he was going to be fine. For her, she's a Reiki master and she's like super intuitive. And for her, it was like this whole dimensional, like she could hear things and see things that she's always known are there. And now she's even more in tune. She says she has to try a lot less in her Reiki practice. Like it's just like opened up her abilities already. I have another friend where it was like really going back to some childhood things. And she was just like said, I was like watching a screen and I could see flashes of different things in my life. And now she's like, okay, well, why did that come up? And what do I need to do with that piece of information? So I think for everyone that at least I've known, it's been a really different experience. Have you found that to be true with the people that you've worked with and even for yourself in each of your journeys?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing too, right? You can take the heroic dose, 20, 30, 50, 150 times. It's going to be different every time. It's not going to be the same. Same with you can microdose, and one day you'll microdose 100 milligrams and be perfectly fine. Another day you'll do it and it'll hit you, in a totally unbelievable way. These things are not to be messed with. They're meant to be taken with intention. They're meant to be taken because you've prepared, because you've done the research, because you love them, essentially because you love yourself enough to work with them, to open yourself up, because you've got an intention to open up your heart or open up your mind, or or you have a question that you really are struggling with, something deep inside of you that you just, a block that you got to break up. It's that there's an intention there. Maybe the intention is in healing, maybe it's in manifesting, but whatever it is, these are great tools, but everybody's going to be using them for a different reason, and it's so unique, whether it's you or somebody else, or it's or if it's you taking the same doses. It's a very unique bio-individual thing. Very much like diet, as I said before. One food for one person may be poison, the same food for another person is going to be medicine.
Right. So let's talk about the end of the trip. You're coming out, you're starting to feel back to baseline a little bit. Like, thought I was going to be there for a while, but now you're back to this reality. What steps do you recommend for people? Do you say drink some tea, take some time, journal, just sit with yourself? What are some of the very first integration tools? And then I want to go down like what's happening in your brain over that next week or two. My friends and the people I've worked with have talked about how their dreams are like cray for the first, like, especially several days after, like just really intense, lucid kind of dreams. So let's talk about like, I'm coming out. What do you recommend? And then sort of what's happening over the next week or two, and what are some integration things that people could consider?
Yeah, so if we're coming back to psilocybin, when you start coming down, like usually, around the 4 to 6 hour mark, that's when, around across the board, often I hear that it's more of a utopia. This is the time when feel the oneness with everybody, where you feel connected, where you're in flow, you feel like you could conquer the world, and you have insights from everybody who is ever great in the world, and it's a really great time once you hit that point. And but then you wake up the next morning, it's like, oh, now what?
Mm-hmm.
Some of the energy has faded, some of the commitment has faded, and that's just a test from the universe. How bad did you want that? How good did that feel? Do you want that again? And here's now how you have to work for it. It's almost like when in life, I don't know if you guys have ever done this, but maybe been like a bad relationship, or lived in a house that you love, but you hated the landlords, or anything like that, and then you leave, and you're like, oh, why did that happen to me? Why did that not work out? I loved it so much, but it wasn't the right situation. It's like a test in the universe. How bad do you want it? Are you going to work for that and make it your own? Are you now going to go get your own property? Are you now going to find the love of your life? Psychedelics do the exact same thing. It's like, it's just a test. How bad do you want that feeling? How bad do you want that thing? How bad do you want that answer that you found? How bad do you want that freedom? And then it shows you the way to do that work. And it's up to you to do that work. That means, having a journal with you or some pieces of paper or, a blank canvas where you can draw out or make a collage of, what it is that you want to manifest, where you start going into your calendar and programming in everything that's on your to-do list so you actually do it. This is the time for all of that. Some other things I'm going to recommend just for self-care would be, get into herbal teas. Oftentimes mushrooms will give me, a tea blend. That being said, I'm very much into the herbology field and have my own apothecary, so that may not be the same message for everybody, but that's something that comes through for me, is very nourishing teas and different tea blends. It'll kind of tell me, okay, you're missing some of this mineral, you got to boost it up. And so I do that through teas and through herbs more often than supplements. But for somebody else, it may be a different message. I do recommend, though, nourishing teas. Maybe it's, self-care by taking a bath or using lotions. Some recommendations I would have is, if you're a really busy person and you don't have time to, pamper yourself in a bath and with lotions all the time, what you can do is while you're in the shower, you can fill up a big jug, like a watering jug for your plants or like a juice jug, and you fill it up with all the herbs or water and the essential oils, or water and even Epsom salts. If you're deficient in magnesium, or you feel magnesium would really help you with your energy, with your mood, with your, aches and pains, you can add in, some essential oils and some Epsom salts. And when you get out of the shower, you pour it all over your body and you let it absorb in. You don't rinse it off. You let yourself air dry. You do a little dance, you get in all your crevices, and, so that's a really great practice that I do practice and that I recommend to most people, because there are minerals and nutrients that, are missing in the daily diet that a lot of people aren't getting. And so this is a great way that you can do it. And also at the same time, be respecting your body and giving yourself, some intentional self-love, some intentional and well-needed self-care. You really, truly are worth it. And you'll see the value in that by using these medicines too. And just by picking up some of these practices and using them in your daily life, you see how it makes you a better person, so that you can be more for other people, so that you can be more for your kids, for your job, for your husband, for yourself. You can live that life that you actually want. And it starts with feeling good and, and riding a different frequency than you were before. And that comes from changing up your routines a little bit, adding in some more self-care, doing a little bit more contemplation work through journaling. Dream work is a lot similar to psychedelics as well. And so having a journal there to record your dreams, and then actually make the intention to look up what they mean online, or to have a book, or, call that friend that always talks about dreams. We all have one or two of those. Just call them up and be like, let's have a talk.
Why does this keep coming up for me? What do I need to face?
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. So having someone that you can talk to after your experience about what you experienced, like having that dream friend, I think would be an important piece, especially if you're working on some of those deep, like more shadow work type stuff. And it isn't just so much about just connecting and the oneness, but it really is like, okay, I'm going deep. Or sometimes the mushroom just takes you there and you don't really know you're going deep, right? But to have someone to help you integrate, what do you do with this now? Because you come back like maybe with this knowingness you didn't have before. Do you think that it also changes like your, I don't know if courage level is the right way to say it, but what is it about, like, let's say I know I need to set boundaries with my sister. Let's say like that's been on my list for a year. Like I've come to my awareness. I know I'm supposed to do this. I have this psychedelic experience. It shows me things that confirm that. How am I going to show up differently? What does the experience do that now is going to help me show up differently post experience versus pre?
Okay, so this is where, like, as I said before, it's your job to take responsibility now. It's your job to, write everything out in your calendar so you actually do it. All those, paths that you know are going to lead you. Here is going to be the biggest takeaway for this is a quote by Yogi Bhajan. If you want to learn something, you read about it. You want to understand something, you write about it. You want to master something, you teach it. So I do that in all areas of my life. I did that when I wrote my book. I did that when I went to school. I did that when I became a parent. All of these big things that have ever happened in my life, I've taken that advice and used it. If for the first week after ceremony, you're just have scheduled in your calendar maybe 10-20 minutes that you're going to learn about setting healthy boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next week, you actually start writing out what these healthy boundaries are, the ones that you're going to set. And then maybe the third week, you actually set up a date with your sister and you put into practice those things. And then once you're successful in it, you can then teach to other people. Because healthy boundaries is something, we all have to work on.
Right. When you work with people or you've had experiences with others, do you find that they kind of like it's best to take on sort of one intention at a time when you go into ceremony? Or are you like, here's all my stuff, mushrooms, whatever you want? Or do you say, okay, specifically, can we please focus on career? Like, what am I doing with my life? What's my purpose? What's my meaning? Where am I going? Do you tend to ask people to say, hey, let's focus on one thing. Let's be intentional about it. Let's think about that before we go in. Let's think about that after. Or do you just say, leave it open and then see what comes out the other side and then integrate?
That is a really good question. Okay, so my go-to on this would be, if you got a lot of stuff going on, chances are what's happening in one area of your life is happening in all areas of your life. So if you're feeling really overwhelmed, there's a lot of stuff and you have no idea what to do with any of it and you're just overwhelmed and you want to give it all away, give it all away. It's the same as, if you write it all down on paper and you burn it in some, sacred ceremony, or if you're doing yoga and or meditation or breath work and you go down, you're like, I'm just giving everything back to Mama Nature. She knows what to do with that energy, So
I don't want it.
If you want to give it all to mushrooms, do it, because the truth is they know what to do with it, and they will help you. So if you're, it likely will come down to one thing. When I really feel that focus matters, and, this is especially for women, men are already thinking more linear thinking. Women, we're like starburst, right? We're like, we're thinking about everything all the time. And so I feel that when the focus matters is when you're scheduling things into your calendar. Write out the to-do list. If that's your style, is writing lists, write out your list. But then go through that list and say, what is high priority? What's secondary? What's non-negotiable? And you schedule in those things. And when you set an intention to do each one of those tasks as it shows up in your calendar or with an alarm, your intention is that one thing. And so here's where different medicine comes in handy, is cannabis. For anybody who does smoke cannabis, make sure you're setting intentions with that medicine, because it is a medicine. It's one to be used with intention, and it's one masterful tool to help you focus. So if you've got a task, maybe it's something creative, maybe it's something you've been procrastinating. But if you smoke cannabis and you have the intention that I'm doing this task after this, then it's a great tool to help you just focus in and lose yourself for 4 hours to one task.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I find that it's like a very creative. It's hard to focus on something like editing a book, but it's really easy to clean when you have to clean your house. Or if you want to get really creative, like just let go in like the writing or the painting or the sculpting or the connecting. Yeah, I think it really does help with that ability to those restrictions that we keep. You can just like let it go and just be in the moment.
Yes,
for sure. Let's talk about community. You talked a little bit about like how community is really important. What have you found? What is the community like out there? And why is community such an important part of integration?
human beings, we need touch. Babies will die if they are not touched. And we forget about that when we're an adult. And now we're in this world that's more disconnected than ever before. We're disconnected because of technology, and we're even more disconnected because of all the lockdowns for the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And so we really do crave that human touch. And if we can't have human touch, the next best thing is to find like-minded people online, use this wonderful resource we have called the internet to find the people who are like us. And at Elemental Growth, every Sunday we open up to the public. Sunday is a day, it's a sacred day in most religions. It's a day that I used to just take personally to myself. But then I realized, I'm doing these things, and team members would, just ask me to meet with them and share in some of my practices. And so I really did just open it up to everybody. And I said, okay, I'm going to now make that my work day, and I take off other days of the week for travel. And so on Sundays now we go live on Instagram at 11:11 for that sacred time to help you guys make a wish, set intentions, and answer some questions, and dig into some topics that you guys message me in DMs and things like that. And then at noon we do a coaching circle with our private inner circle. Again, this is free, but we do ask that you just hop on the phone with us so that we know you're the right kind of person, you're the right kind of fit. And then we give you the links to join in, no problem. But if there's somebody else that can help you better, or a different resource that you need, or anything like that, then a 10-minute call allows us the opportunity to give you what it is that you need in that time. Maybe it's with us, maybe it's not. And so our coaching circle is through there. For anybody who does join our inner circle, they get that at noon, and then at 6 p.m. And these times are all in Eastern Standard Time. But at 6 p.m. we do a mastermind, and this is for anybody who's an entrepreneur, somebody starting out, in the psychedelic realm, or maybe it's something else that's, just a really big passion project that was led to you through the use of psychedelics, or you just feel is really going to help a lot of people, and you need some help with that. We do help people, establish their business and find the people who needs their help. And so that's another offering that we do.
I love it. You're a connector.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, I love that
Thanks
so much.
to the mushrooms. They taught me well.
Yeah, I'm going to definitely put all those links or ways for people to find that in the descriptions. And I love that entrepreneurial one. I'm for sure, like, as I see myself getting more and more in this space, I'm like, I need to know some other people, some other great people in this space. Like, because a lot of it's just been really intuitive. Just sort of like just with my background or what I've kind of like spent 20 plus years doing. I'm like, okay, let's bring a little bit of this in, a little bit of that in, but really connecting with people who are of like mind. I could see where that would be so beneficial and so helpful.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing that. Let me think about what else maybe I want to ask you about. Is there a time of day? Do you recommend like 2:45 in the afternoon, so that way it'll come in by this time and then you hit the sunset? Or does it not really matter? Do you find that there's a specific time? I know you talked about the moon cycles, like really lining up with that. Is there a specific time that you think is better for diving into psilocybin or any of these other psychedelics if people feel like that's right for them?
Yeah, I always find that the solstice, the equinox, the moon cycles, that they're all very sacred times, and there's just a different energy at those times. So a lot of the time, to connect myself, those are the dates that I like to use. When it comes to microdosing, I oftentimes will recommend doing it in the morning. When it comes to heroic dose, I like doing it around sunset, going for a walk, and then as I hit euphoria, by then it's a starry night, and you start understanding the whole meaning behind black holes and all that kind of stuff. But that's for me.
Scientists, when you've got psilocybin, answers are all right there, people.
Yeah, the answers are always inside of you. So those are my answers, and I do give out those resources. You can find them all on Psychedelic. Some ways I've used that, and of course my book Be the Change, that's available on Amazon or on my website elementalgrowth.org, so you can access that as well. But these are my answers. For anybody else that may be different.
Okay, one random last thought for you, and then I'd love for you to share any final thoughts. So I had an experience where I took a hero's dose and really didn't feel much different. I just said, I feel more like myself, but I was not anywhere near what all these experiences that I'd heard about or read about or seen other people go through. Have you heard about that before? Have you heard of people taking these hero doses and just not, their brains just doesn't work the same way? What could that be about? Or have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, so there are, I actually did an Instagram live with a guy named Mason. And that's what happened to him all the time, is that he had a really high tolerance for these things. So he really
It's
experimented well, and
natural.
now he's made his own tools that really help in that
Yeah.
way. But here's the thing, it's like what I said with microdosings. The same person can take 100 milligrams of a microdose and feel nothing, and then the next day take 100 milligrams, and everything changes. It's the same with the heroic dose too. It's not going to be the same every time. You may go back and do a heroic dose again and be you're a different person every day you wake up. Everything changes. So yeah, you can go back and try it again, and it's going to be a totally different experience. It's
Don't
just
give up.
what you're ready.
That's what you're saying here. Like, stick with it.
Yeah, and if what your message was I'm myself, then maybe it's that you didn't need anything else because you're already good.
Right.
Or maybe
Right. Yeah. That was my initial thought. Like, all right, maybe the mushroom was like, yeah, today's not the day to have some big experience. It's just really feeling like, huh, I'm just yeah, I get it. Like my boyfriend who I was with, he was like, we live in a matrix and what's going on and what's real. And I'm thinking, I think there's these questions all the time. Like I ponder this stuff naturally, So it's like, I was like, what answer do you want? Do you want like the philosophical answer? Do you want that you're thinking this because you've done psilocybin? Like I can give you both because either one or both true. I don't know. So it was definitely an interesting experience that I love asking people about that. Like, what are your experiences with that?
Yeah, and I've had that happen. It's mushroom psilocybin. It gets me. Cambo got me good, but when I worked with DMT, I took 6 puffs the first time, felt nothing. The second time I
Wow.
worked with DMT, I took 13, and what I
That seems
saw,
like a lot. But
yeah, it is a lot. And what I saw though was kind of what I always saw. It's just that it was more vivid. There's a part of me, as an intuitive, I kind of see sparkles around, and I knew that there was kind of a grid because I've worked with mushrooms a lot. It just made it really, really clear, and it was almost like I could kind of see, that the the sky was a bit of a highway, and that astral projectors would like fly by every once in a while. And it's like I always knew that. I always knew that was kind of happening, but it was more clear. It was almost like it wasn't as much of a trip as it was reinforcement that I'm not crazy, that it's okay. You can open yourself up to these things. You don't have to hide that you see the world in a different way. But it wasn't exactly a trip. It wasn't what I didn't go off to another dimension.
right.
It wasn't a lot of what you hear. And I did take a heavier dose the second time, even to get to that point. So yeah, these, it's different for everybody.
Sorry, not another question's come up. What about people who are on any kind of antidepressant, anti-anxiety? Do you find that they need a higher dose because it is sort of washes it out a little bit? Or have you found that people should probably best what is your recommendation around that? Or what is your thoughts around that? Or does it impact it at all? I've done a little bit of research, but I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I always say get off before you start it. Like we don't have any liability on any of that because we're not the distributors or anything like that. People are sourcing things themselves, but yeah, I always recommend get off of them. If you're having crazy side effects like vomiting or brain zaps or moodiness or suicidal thoughts or anything like that, try a microdose. Go for the smaller doses to help with the withdrawal symptoms because it's a really heavy drug. And they are addictive drugs, and all they do is suppress. So once you get off, all of that pain comes back. Medication is meant to make you dependent. It's not meant, it doesn't go to heal the roots of anything. Medicine, our medicine system today is great in case of emergency, a broken bone, a car accident, snowboarding accident, things like that. But it's not so good when it comes to mental health, especially the medication parts of it. Talk therapy can be helpful, but, giving the medication, it suppresses. Giving painkillers, opiates out the way that they do, all that does is suppress the pain, and then it comes back worse. All these diets do is suppress the weight, and then it comes back. You have to get to the roots of the problem. Psychedelics are great at helping you get to the roots. So if you need to use a microdose to help you get through the withdrawal symptoms, that can be great. I don't recommend that to everybody. Oftentimes I do think, just get off, like cold turkey, make the decision and commit to it. There are other things that help too, like St. John's wort. However, using even herbs like that are non-psychedelic, they can still have adverse side effects if you are still on the medications. So again, you have to get off and just do it. If you have that calling, get off. This is not for me. Maybe it suited you for a little while, but it doesn't suit you anymore. Then make the decision, commit, and find somebody who's been through it that can help you. Maybe it's a coach, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a stranger or a friend of a friend that has been through hell and come out of it. Because there are people who come out of this stuff all the time, and you are far from alone.
It's beautiful advice. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. Any final words, any final thoughts on this subject? Anything maybe we haven't touched on that you're thinking, gosh, I want to share this, or what about this? Anything for you?
Oh, wow. We covered a lot.
I know. I took so many notes also.
Yeah. You have so many great questions. This was a wonderful collaboration, and I love spending my time with you. I'd love to hear more of your story one day as well. I can't think of anything right offhand, but maybe it's another time we do a different collaboration. We can dive into some different subjects.
I would love that.
Yeah, I would really appreciate that too.
So let people know one more time. I know I'll put everything in the show notes, but where is the easiest place for people to connect with you and the work that you're doing?
The easiest way to connect with me personally is through Instagram. You can connect with me or one of my team members through there so easily at Elemental Growth. And we're on there doing something every day anyway, and so that's the best way to contact us. But we also have our website, elementalgrowth.org, that has all of the information about us and our coaches and our programs, things like that. And there is also Psychedelic, where I've been writing, as I said, for that community for a couple years now. They're amazing resource. There are tons of amazing resources, but that is one of the really good ones.
I love it. Thank you, Ashley, so much. Don't hang up yet. I want to say bye, but I'm going to hit the end record button. But thank you so much for being on this show and for doing this with me. And I really appreciate all your wisdom and all your knowledge, and the work that you're doing in this space is so important. I really feel like we're on the cutting edge of something. Like it was around 1,000+ studies in the 60s and then dropped off because of that stigma, because of CIA or whatever the reasons are. And it's like, now we're coming back around. It's slow, but I feel like this wave coming. Maybe let's just end with that question. Where do you see this going? And then then I promise we'll end. Where do you see this movement? What is your sense of the next 5 years?
Okay, so my mentor, Dr. Dan Engel, he said that all psychedelics are going to be legalized or at least decriminalized around the world within the next 3 years, by 2023 or by the end of 2023, he said. So with that coming, if it comes true in that time frame, then we can expect that more people are going to be working, with these things, obviously. And I just feel that there would be a more... If people are using them with intention for the right reasons, could become a very beautiful world. A liberated person aligned to love is... What is a liberated person aligned to love?
How would you finish that sentence? My interview with Ashley cut off right there, and we were able to reconnect down the road. But I want you to answer that question for yourself. A liberated person aligned to love is. Thanks for listening to Ideas to Human Better. Have a great day, everyone. I'm Eva Payne.